Well, good afternoon, everyone. How are we all? Good? Say yes. Yes, good, great. Welcome to Whose Lie Is It Anyway? My name is Pasquale Bourne. I'm here as a representative of the Reuters Institute, which is here in Oxford. I'm an assistant head of marketing and PR. And today we've got something, a sort of a special event for you. We've got some academics here who are going to give you a taster of their research. And at the end, there's going to be something interesting for you all to do. So I'll explain a bit more later. But what we'll do is just jump straight into the research. I'll introduce each of the academics, and they'll give you a little bit of a taster of their research. Okay, are we all ready? Good, good. And do we all know why we're here in the museum? Do you know what the theme of the event is? Fakes and forgeries. Just keep that in your mind. Fakes and forgeries. Okay, so I'm going to introduce our first speaker. Please welcome Professor Stephen Gunn. He's a fellow and tutor in history at Merton College, just down the road, and a professor of early modern history. And I'll just get his slide ready. Please give him a round of applause. I'll get out of the way.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So I've got about 5 minutes to tell you about everyday life and accidental death in Tudor England. And what we've been doing is looking at about 9,000 of these. Now, that's a coroner's inquest report from the 16th century, and if you died in sudden or violent circumstances, the coroner and the jury had to decide, was it a murder, was it a suicide, or was it an accident? And because there are these 9,000 accidents, it means we can give you health and safety advice should you find yourself in Tudor England. And these reports come from nearly over the whole of England, roughly in proportion to the number of people living in each county. So lots of accidents in Yorkshire, lots of people in Yorkshire, not so many accidents in Oxfordshire, not so many people in Oxfordshire. That's the kind of thing that enables us to generate this health and safety advice. So first of all, don't go to Rutland. Now, Rutland is the smallest county in England, but as you can see, it's absolutely lethal. Oxfordshire, Buckinghamshire, Berkshire, pretty safe, where most of us live. Hampshire, really safe. Rutland, head for head, completely disastrous. So don't go to Rutland. Secondly, don't pick fruit. Now, why shouldn't you pick fruit? Well, archery practice is understandably dangerous. There's arrows flying around as people practice archery, and it happens a lot. Men have to practice their archery on Sundays. Guns, well, we all know guns are dangerous, still dangerous now, but actually picking fruit and nuts kills more people in Tudor England than either guns or archery. Thinking of animals, don't get any sheep. Dogs still occasionally kill people now. Pigs, horribly in the 16th century, root around in houses, sometimes kill small children. But sheep, more people killed in accidents with sheep. Thinking about some recreation, don't play football. Why shouldn't you play football? Well, sword fighting has obvious dangers, but actually a lot more people are killed in accidents playing football than they are sword fighting. In the 16th century. What can you think of might give you a bit more calming, relaxing kind of relaxation? Well, bell ringing. No, don't go bell ringing, because throwing the hammer, they're still inventing cricket in the 16th century, sadly for them, because it's the great summer sport. Then the summer sport is throwing the hammer. They don't have the safety cage we have in the Olympics now, so throwing the hammer is really dangerous in the 16th century, but bell ringing kills far, far more people than throwing the hammer. Now, all these statistics are based on reports of real individual accidents. So these enable us to give you some slightly more niche health and safety advice about particular things that you might be thinking about. So first of all, don't play bowls on ice. Now, it's really exciting, right? There's ice, the bowl goes fast, it goes smooth. It's not like playing on bumpy grass. Must have been really thrilling, but look at this poor man on the frozen River Cherwell in 1534, playing bowls on ice. The ice broke. There's nothing to be done to help him. Watch out for bacon. Now, we're not talking about eating bacon. Obviously, eating bacon is very nice if you like bacon, but don't sit by the fire if there's bacon hanging above it. Look, this poor lady in Huntingdonshire in 1543, sitting by the fire, and the bacon, which was hanging to smoke up in the fire in the chimney, fell on top of her. Meanwhile, while you're in the kitchen, whatever Sophie Ellis-Bextor may tell you, don't dance in the kitchen. Don't dance in the kitchen because, like this poor man, there might be an open fire, there might be a big vat of boiling water. you've had too much to drink, you might fall into the fire, come a terrible cropper. And you might think, well, that's an isolated incident. I wouldn't get drunk and go in a kitchen. And you try to dance on one leg, which is pretty reckless, really, isn't it? But actually, no, really don't dance in the kitchen, because look at this poor man who spun round, clearly throwing one shape too many, and impaled himself on the roasting spit. Now, I think I've got to the end of my 5 minutes, so thank you very much for listening to me, and mind how you go as the Leaving Museum. Thank you very much.
Round of applause. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, so keep all that in your mind, and then we'll listen to the next researcher. And I'd like to introduce Professor Geraldine King, who is Professor of Linguistics and Modern Languages at the University of Louvain. Louvain, thank you. She's also a visiting scholar here at Jordan College. So please, we're very happy to have you. So I'll get your slides ready. So just let me know when to change the slides.
Thank you very much.
Just a moment. Sorry, everyone.
That's okay. My passion is languages and multilingualism and bilingualism. I was lucky to grow up bilingual, and I've been teaching languages and confronted by the questions that people ask me on how to explain language issues. I use different tools, and a tool that has really changed my life, my research, and the lives of many of my students is this book. You may have heard of the Smurfs as a so-called fictional character, as animation, as a toy. This is an original book which was created and written in 1972, published in 73. The reason I choose this one is the title in French and in Schtroumpf, the Schtroumpf language, is Schtroumpf vert et vert Schtroumpf. This is to do with the order of words, and in language, if I hope you are learning a language other than English, different languages, you may be multilingual, there are different word orders for different languages. For example, quite simply, we say a green book, not a book green. But in French, you say un livre vert, a book green. Why is that? Languages evolve. Languages are invented. They're all invented, created by humans, and over time, they have changed, and influences have made them change. Now, in this particular book, the title meaning Smurf Green and Green Smurf, if you know the story depicted in the book, it's about word order and which one is right and which one is wrong. The interesting thing is that there isn't a right or a wrong. I got interested in Peo. His real name is Pierre Culliford, who is the artist and author of this book. And it turns out that in 1972, to this day nearly, it was the 5th of April 1972, was the last sighting of a Schtroumpf in a very small village called Cruppet in Belgium. The dot is there. That is Cruppet, represents Cruppet, near Namur. Now, the interesting thing about that is that at that same time, Belgium was officially divided. You may know this. There are 3 official national languages: the French speakers, the Flemish speakers, and there is a small province that speaks German. And there are still problems and competitions and warring factions between mainly the Flemish and the Walloons. Cruppet is in Wallonia, not far from Namur, where there is a lovely little chateau. And it's a very, very, very small village. I really recommend it. It's one of the prettiest villages of Wallonie. And a colleague of Leuven, the Flemish-speaking university, the KUL, Jan Vertogen, who is a geologist, encouraged me to go there and explore. Now, there's been several projects there in research about the Schtroumpf. There is evidence that in medieval time, in the caves that are surrounding this chateau, there are many caves and geological excavations, there have been signs and markings that date back to medieval times that show the Schtroumpf language, as we know it translated, Smurf language. Smurf, in English it was Smurf, de Smurven in Flemish, Los Pitufos in Spanish, I Puffi in Italian, that all came much, much later. The interesting thing is also that Peo created this album in the idea of a political state, making a political statement about different languages and different cultures, and they can't possibly get on. But having been there, there is also a very interesting, thank you, slide showing a life-size replica of a Smurf. They have found evidence right up to the mid-20th century of sightings and life of the Smurfs. And the town being called Krupé, there's a place where half down the line of a little cellar, there are markings, and it's Pécru. So they had this difference in language. Whether they fought in medieval times, we don't know, but they then carried on, and the language and the signs mixed up, and they mixed up the word order. It may seem completely ridiculous, but the fact that they understood each other, whether you say un schtroumpf vert or un vert schtroumpf, a green Smurf or a Smurf green, they still understood each other. I have encouraged my students to follow that, and in fact, there is a whole movement that happens in different parts of Europe where people genuinely dress up. And you could think, oh, and it's like a Comic Con, it's a festival which exists. But what the Schtroumpf or Smurf represent is unity and community and joy. And they genuinely get together to celebrate this and to celebrate the fact that we can mix and match languages in a very positive way. And so in learning your language, feel free, be flexible, try out. It's how you express yourself in your passion, in the musicality of a language, that you'll find the right way. Thank you.
Round of applause. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us. Okay, so we've had history and linguistics. So the next speaker is going to be Kirsten Shepard, the Professor of English and Theatre Studies and a tutorial fellow at St. Cat's College, also down the road. So please, a round of applause for Kirsten Shepard.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to tell a story, but I need your help to imagine where we are in this story, and I'm especially glad to see children here because it involves children. But I should warn you, it's not a very happy story. So it's a story about what I'm researching, and I'll get to that, but I just want you to start imagining this. So we're in the 1870s, and it's the Victorian period. And imagine a young woman who's got a couple of kids. She's married to a guy who works in a bank, and everything seems fine. But then her husband starts developing this cough. And sure enough, the doctor says it's tuberculosis, and the husband, the whole family is going to have to go south. He needs to go south. In those days, you went south for your health, and you recovered, if you were lucky, by going to a warmer climate. The problem is that the husband is a bit stubborn, and he says, we don't have the money. I'm just starting my career. We don't have the money for this. And so I'll just hope that I get better. And the young woman is wringing her hands, thinking, why won't he listen to me? We have to do this. He's going to die. But in those days, women had very few options. She couldn't get a job. She had no education. And when you got married, any property and money that you had became your husband's. So she had no money to draw on. So she thought, well, I'll just borrow some money. But in those days, you couldn't borrow money without your husband's consent. You couldn't get a loan. So she's really stuck. She thinks, I'll ask my father. So she's about to go to her father, and then her father dies. So in utter desperation, she takes out a loan by forging her father's signature. And they go down south, and the husband recovers. And that's a wonderful outcome, isn't it? But then her husband, a couple of years later, finds out what she'd done. And she's ready for, oh, thank you so much for saving my life. Way to go. But no, he denounces her. He says, that's it, you're a terrible woman, and you are not fit to be a mother. And so, this is the end. And she is in shock because she thought it was going to be gratitude. And, I'm so happy you saved my life. So she thinks about this, and she gets back to her husband, comes in with a coat on. He says, sit down, we are talking, and we are going to have to go through our marriage. Big discussion ensues. And then she says, I really have to go out and find out who I am because I've learned everything from men. I've learned everything from my father first and then from you. And I'm just confused and I need to figure out who I actually am. And so she leaves the 3 children and her husband and vanishes. Now, a lot of you probably recognize this as the plot of one of the most famous plays in the world called A Doll's House by the Norwegian playwright Henrik Ibsen. But what a lot of people don't realize, and this is what I'm researching, is that Nora, the main character, Nora Helmer, who does this deed of saving her life and then leaves, was actually a real person. She was based on someone, I know it sounds crazy, but called Laura. And so Ibsen took Laura's life and events from her life almost exactly as I've just described them and put them on the stage. The difficult thing was that Laura she didn't know this was happening. She had no idea that he was going to do this, and they were friends. She was an aspiring writer, and he was sort of mentoring her. And so without her consent, without her permission, he just took all that information, the private suffering of her, and put it on stage for the world to see. And this caused an absolute catastrophe in her life. Her husband was furious, and he had her committed to an insane asylum for a month and refused to let her see the children, filed for divorce. And under the laws of the time, she could only see her children again if she agreed to go back and remain in the marriage. And so this is the bigger story of the ways in which that real story became this real play. And one of the things I'm interested in is how can we learn a bit more about this real woman, and what are the implications when you take a life story of a real person and put it on a stage or in a movie. And we see this kind of thing happening a lot. So that's the story of Laura/Nora, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, and now we have our final researcher. So he's an early career researcher. This is Troy Gamble. He's an animal behaviorist working at the Goodall Institute here in Oxford. So I'll do your slides for you if you want to go up. Yep.
So yes, I am an animal behaviorist, and I've currently been researching feline communication behaviors, and I'd like to share some of that with you today. So, dogs aside, we love cats, but do they love us back? And can they really tell us what they think about us? When we're talking about feline communication, the first obvious thing that we look at is their ability to vocalize their feelings. So meowing, purring, trills, hissing, growling. Cats make a lot of noise. And if you've ever found yourself asking, why do cats do that? Or what is my cat saying? Well, I'm hopefully going to answer a few of those today. So first we have meows. Cats have hundreds of types of meows in their meow bank, or their vocabulary. And we're going to listen to just a few examples of that today. So this first meow. A lot of, if you're a cat owner, you'll recognize that meow because that is simply, I'm hungry. And another cry, which is similar-ish. Oh, no, I want to go back. No, this is purring, this is not crying. We can move on from crying, from meows, if you... It's okay. It's okay. Is that the right one? Yes. So this, in layman's term, means give me attention. So it's similar to I'm hungry, but it's a little bit more elongated at the end. And we have a third cry. I don't know if that's gonna... No, it's fine. No, it's fine. Okay, scratch that. So moving on to purring. Why do cats purr? So if you own a cat, you've probably heard your cat purr, and if you haven't heard your cat purr, then it's probably time to reassess your relationship with your cat. So the obvious reason that they're purring, and if you haven't heard a cat purr, this is what it sounds like. It's very subtle, so yeah. It's a very deep kind of calming sound. I actually listen to it to help me sleep at night as a kind of like white noise thing. So the obvious reason that a cat would be purring is that they're happy or they're content. But actually there are several other reasons why a cat would be purring, and they're depending on the pitch, the volume, and the duration of the purr. So for example, a short purr can indicate disappointment. So if your cat's food isn't what they were expecting or what they were hoping for, they might give off a very brief purr. Or if they've lost a game of catch the red dot. Or on the opposite end of the purr spectrum, or the purrstrom, scratch that, an intermittent purr lasting longer than 10 minutes can actually indicate that they're accepting of their situation, that they're happy with their situation. So depending on what that situation is, like food, they could be happy with like a change in food or a change in environment or a stranger that's in the house. If they're purring intermittently for longer than 10 minutes, that's just kind of what they're signifying. So we'll move on. There are many other communication methods that cats use. For example, tail positions can indicate something, head butting or head bonking, bowing, or kneading, or making biscuits, some people call it, or spraying, marking their territory. But I want to briefly just talk about slow blinking. So while slow blinking has been explained as a cat smiling or a cat showing that they feel safe around you, it can also mean the opposite of that. So have you ever caught a cat staring intensely at you midway through a slow blink? This basically is a warning sign. So if a cat is staring at you midway through a slow blink, it's meant to intimidate you into either giving them space, to stop looking at them, or to give them different food. I have an example. My cat, Billy. Yeah, so basically, knowing the difference between the types of slow blinking could save you getting into some awkward situations with your feline friend. That's all I have time for, but thank you.
Thank you very much. Round of applause. Okay, so now we've heard from each of our researchers, and now you come into it. I'm sorry to tell you, but some, or maybe all of these academics are fake. Now, it's up to you to kind of tell me who you think might be fake. But first, before we do that, I'm just going to throw it out there and get you to ask some questions. So if anyone has any questions for any of our academics, just pop your hand up, and anyone want to, we've got a microphone as well, and if anyone wants to ask a question of our academics to try and catch them out, any questions about their research? I think you're all very thorough, so everyone kind of understood everything. Did everyone understand all the linguistics, the animal behaviors, history, theatre history, everything? Question? Oh, there's a question over there. Can we get the mic? Yeah.
Thank you very much. I had a question for the historian. With all these accidents happening, when you were looking at all these things coming from the coroner's reports, are there anything that is used, do you think, that's actually, you know, when coroners are not necessarily telling the truth about what they think happened? So is a fruit picking accident actually mean something else? Or are they actually all being killed picking fruit?
Good question.
Yeah, it's a good question, and obviously in the end we don't know, because we just know what it says in the report, and in the end all we know is what the jurors, who are 12 people from the village or the bit of the town, say to the coroner. So it may be that they're covering things up. And the really interesting ones are the ones where it's right on the margin. So you've got people fighting. Are they really having a duel? Does one person really kill the other? Or is it an accident? Or does they even have one where they say, they have all sorts of different explanations, and they say, well, in the end, he probably killed himself by throwing himself on the other person's sword. And you say, well, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. But maybe that's the closest they could get. The other interesting ones, I'm sorry if I go on too long, but the other interesting ones are cart crashes where people, because the horses pulling the cart are much more valuable than the cart, because the cart's just some wood put together, whereas horses are quite valuable things in 16th century, you always try and say that most of the horses weren't involved in the accident. So you have all these accidents where the driver stops all the horses and then one naughty horse starts pulling the cart again and runs somebody over. And that way you only lose the cart and that one horse and not the other 5 horses. So they're the kind of things that are a bit bent at the margins, I think.
Okay, great. Any other questions for any of our other academics, or all of them perhaps? Any? I think everyone's been quite clear. All right, well, this is where you come into it. We've got a very high-tech system to work out who's telling the truth and who's lying, and we've spared no expense. It's called the fakeometer. As you can see, this is a very high-tech piece of equipment, so I'm afraid I can't let you touch it. But what I'm going to get is all of our academics to stand up, and it's powered on noise. So as it goes up past the academic, if it gets enough noise, it turns to fake, and you reveal who the faker is, okay? So if I can get the academics to stand up at one at a time, so you can stay seated. So Professor Geraldine King, please stand up. So as I bring it up, if you think she was telling the truth, then you keep your noise down, but if you think she was lying, then you cheer really loudly, okay, as the thing goes up. So we'll start at the bottom, okay, and we'll just do a test, so if everyone could just make a lot of noise. Okay. We might need a bit more. Remember, this room echoes, so we want as much noise as possible. So as it goes up, if you think the professor was telling the truth about the Smurf research and finding out the history of Smurfs and the anthropology and the linguistics of Smurfs, then keep the clapping down. But if you think she was lying, then lots of noise. Okay, so the fakeometer, I'm switching it on. And there we go, and we're going to go up. Do you think she was a faker? Do you think she was a faker? All right, well, we'll keep that down so you can take a seat. All right, and now Professor Stephen Gunn. Here we go. So again, if you think his research about Tudor deaths was real or fake, let him know. So if you, what do we think? Oh, I think it's about there. You'd say. I think okay. So you think he's real? Okay. Thank you very much. And now early career researcher Troy Gamble. Yes. Cats and animal behaviors, feline communication. So let's see. Quite real. Okay. All right. Okay. Great. Yeah. No, that's good. It's good. Okay. Thank you very much. And Kirsten Shepard Barr talking about A Doll's House by Henrik Ibsen. So, wow. Okay. Absolutely real. Absolutely real. Okay. All right. So if I could get everyone to stand up now, and would the real academics please step forward? Oh, okay, so I think everyone guessed quite well, but could the fake academics please step forward as well now, please? So the 3 of us were absolute fakers. I don't work for the Reuters Institute.
I'm not Geraldine.
Geraldine is not
Juliet.
Geraldine, and you're not Troy. So those are our fake academics. So as you can imagine, Smurfs, unfortunately, I don't think they're real, are
There
they?
was not a sighting. We have no recollection or records of sighting. But
But
multilingualism is, and very important.
Yes, and you are actually from Belgium.
And I am multilingual, and
and Smurf gatherings are real, apparently. So.
they are real. They are real.
And Troy, you do, Craig, you do own a cat,
Yeah.
but you don't know anything about animal behavior.
Well, no, that's not true. Cats do communicate, and they do communicate in those kind of ways, but not to the degree that I was saying.
Great, well, thank you very much. And so Kirsten and Stephen, is there anything you wanted to say about your real research? We can stand back, we're not important anymore. Anything you want to say about your real research and what got you into it, perhaps, or?
Oh, well, I mean, I was just taken with this true story of, the true story behind A Doll's House and the fact that audiences never know it. Very rarely do audiences know it. And yet researchers on Ibsen have known this story forever. It's been like 150 years. And I thought it would be so great to make people aware of it, especially we've got the Me Too movement. We've got all kinds of debates about when it's okay to use other people's life stories. And so I'm working with a theater company to make a new play, and it's called Burning Down the House. And and it's going to be probably in a couple of years that we'll have them. Yeah.
Fantastic, great. So we'll available. Yeah, we'll look out for that. And Professor Stephen?
We have spent a long time looking at Tudor accidents. If you Google Oxford Tudor accidents, you'll find our website. They tell you what people are doing all day. Book should be out sometime early next year. And weirdly, there's a Top Trumps Tudor accidents game, which you can get from the university online shop if you're fascinated enough in Tudor accidents.
Yeah, highly recommend that as well. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our very short game show, Whose Lie Is It Anyway? I just want to say a huge thank you to Sarah from the University Museum, and also to all of the team at Torch, John, Jessica, and Alex, who isn't here, and the volunteers. Thank you very much. But also, thank you everyone for coming along to find out a little bit about what's real and what's not. And I believe there are still a few more things going on around the museum and around museums in Oxford. So thank you very much, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.